Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Fired on Mars. I don't normally review shows, but I sometimes do, and I wanted to talk about this one, which is a new animated show on HBO Max. I'm assuming, I don't know if it'll stay around or not, but I wanted to talk about it because I quite liked it. It's very good. So if that's what you're here for. I think the thing with this show, I don't think anyone knew it was coming out. It definitely caught me off guard. It's based on a short film I've never heard of and also can't watch for some reason. They should make that available. It's not cool, guys. I was immediately compelled by it while I am at my, more corporate day job, eating lunch, watching the show, and immediately sort of relate to it. I think a lot of what you see in the show is kind of corporate America and is the facets of it. But I think the setup adds an extra kind of weird complication to this whole thing. It's about a guy named Jeff who went to Mars on, I assume is a one-way ticket, I'm not 100% sure, to Mars in this Mars colony, basically, from this company called Marsley, in sort of their corporate office slash mall slash indoor living facility sort of thing. And he is hired to be a graphic designer. But in the first episode, he is fired. And when he is fired, he basically is just sort of there. He ends up being in a sleep tank because they want to save money on his living. They put him in a various dreamer thing. They give him all sorts of various jobs. And he kind of sees the various kind of looseness and disorganization that corporate America, of course, is. You kind of relate to his aimlessness in the whole idea of this company and it operating within Mars. I'm not sure if I'll do spoilers. If I do, I'll say a thing. So, but right now you're okay. One of the things about animation, and I've said it before, is you can basically do anything you want. The idea of animation that anything is possible as long as you can draw it, basically. And so the choices of this show, I think, reflect the choices that the basically setup and the company Marsley has done. And I think it is actually really smart. And it goes beyond just like, we picked this because, I don't know, adult animation. I don't actually think that is true. What I think is they picked a very natural kind of King of the Hill. I think it's very comparable to King of the Hill in a lot of ways. Natural kind of style. It's not too crazy. No random things are going to happen in this world that doesn't feel sort of realistic in a sense, even though it's a sci-fi show and they're on fucking Mars and stuff. But it's not going to go, no one's going to change form or be off model. You understand you're watching a cartoon, but it's a cartoon sort of constrained under a certain thing, which is what it's going for. I think that sort of reflects the sort of metaphor I think that's going on with the show and what happened with this company Marsley. Because for a second, it is weird that there's a corporate office on Mars and people and that's an obvious metaphor for the idea of the outside world, what else is possible as the winds of Mars hit this office and you think of what can be achieved outside of it. But I think that goes to a larger thing of how fucking unimaginative the corporate people in this company are, because okay, you're on Mars. It is undiscovered. It's not planet Earth. They're not the same regulations even. It's a whole new society. You can do whatever you want. And what do? They make a corporate office. They make a mall. They make the same basic bullshit you have fucking everywhere, but it's on Mars. But you can't really go outside and experience Mars. You can look at Mars out your window. That feels very American, that you'd be completely tied to your job, both with health insurance, living, all these things because of this one company. But it also feels like it because you could literally do anything you want. You have that kind of money and they're gonna let's just make corporate offices, and none of these people seem to do much beyond this little structure here that's apparently been there for 20 years and stuff. And that is their idea. They're not going to be like the Grateful Dead and make a Mars Hotel, which is an underrated album in my opinion. But they've just made a Mars corporate office. And he is stuck in that. These people who came there as a one-way ticket, presumably. I keep hearing that in the press thing. I don't remember that in the show. But they can't come back to see their families. This is the life they chose. They chose to do this, right? And they're stuck there. And their ideal thing is just going to the mall, getting food, going to their job, having these living quarters, and that's fucking it. And the possibilities of Mars are locked out from him. And he gets tastes of well, maybe he doesn't have to listen to them, maybe there's more options and everything, but it's kind of constrained by this structure that is set up that, like, why do we have this everywhere? What is the point of it? And it seems extra silly when you're on fucking Mars. Like, they're on Mars. That's insane. Like, think of, like, how amazing that is. And they made, you know, the mall and an office, which most malls have offices in them, so they sort of just made a big mall. And that's pathetic. Like, I like malls, and I'm still like, why would you do that on Mars, though? Like, I don't get it. And I think that is the thing he's in. He's into people who want these certain things, want these structures, want to excel in these structures. Why? I don't know, because that's how it is. And you just have to accept it. And it's like the people who are making the rules are accepting the rules that were made before them and not changing them. And that's just, like, you know, a larger concept of society. I think a lot of it is both the possibilities of corporate America, particularly when he makes his friend Jackson Oliver. I've met a lot of friends that you could say is trauma bonding. You could say you just have a work ethic that works really well together, and it, like, melds very well, and you just, like, have, like, a friend who you can always call. That's happened to me a few times, and it's kind of like, it's sort of a beauty in that, to be honest, as much as, you know, you're doing that because you need to survive and things. I would not be surprised the people who developed and created the show, Nate Sherman and Nick Vokey, the two guys who made the show, I wouldn't be surprised if they worked in corporate America after this. But that was very much somebody who, like, they don't even seem like they'd be two guys who would ever hang out. He's like this big muscular black dude with, like, dreads and, like, very driven and stuff. And then you have Jeff, who's like a graphic designer, who's like, yeah, I guess I'll do this. Like, I'm sort of into this, and, like, kind of look more mellow. And they just, temperament wise, it makes no sense. But, like, for some reason, at this time in their lives, this job, they are, like, bonded together. And I think that is, it is sort of beautiful. And I think also, like, the idea of, like, when you have a job, there's an episode, I think it's episode 6, where he meets kind of an older person, and that episode tore me up, I would say, because you do meet these older people and you get these new ideas, you think about the possibilities of what else you can do, and you see how kind of impossible that is, but you kind of want to accept their sort of dream, you know, you want to listen to them. I think this is one of the great comments on working in an office I've seen in a while. I do think it's a really unique show and a really wonderful show. It kind of changes episode by episode. It always ends on a big thing that goes into the next episode. A lot of people are saying cliffhangers, I guess, pretty much, but it really drew me in. I found it very relatable working in corporate America, but I also feel like it got into the whole ethos of the whole thing, like, and a few animation styles that I've seen it, like, maybe like this in Cuphead, where it's like the whole point of it is that certain animation style. They didn't just, like, or maybe Spider-Verse. Actually, there's a lot of people do that nowadays. Now that I think about it, it's a lot more common than it used to be. But it feels like that's all part of this, and I think to purposefully pick this style to make this point and stuff, I thought was really ingenious, actually. And it really took me through my life, like, being an adult and working full-time and stuff. It drew me into that, and the ideas of it. It's not one-on-one because I've never worked on Mars or been a graphic designer, but I still find it just beautiful and awakening, and I felt there's so many points of it, and I think it's just a really wonderful, great show. I do kind of want to get more into the end of it, and I know that is a spoiler, so I will just say, if you want to see Fired on Mars, it's on HBO Max or Max whenever you're watching this, and I highly recommend it. I think it's really great, and if you're just kind of like doing your job and, you know, trying to just make a living so you can, you know, make sure your family or yourself is okay and stuff, and you're kind of observing all these things, I think it is a great show for that. I think it gets the doldrums of it. I also think it gets the good of it, but I think it understands how crazy and unimaginative it is that we're all in these stupid offices, when you see the life and the imagination, the possibilities of Mars, of the real world, of everything else, where the winds are hitting the windows that you're trapped inside, thinking about what everything man could achieve, and yet we are all in these offices. Alright, so this is spoiler territory, I guess. Episode 5 actually was not episode 6. I said that about, but just forget I said it that way. They can be confused, the people who don't want to get spoiled, I guess. That one was a real hard, especially like seeing like the character of Sheila and Jeff and Sheila, and like there's so many times I've talked to like older people at jobs and you think about the possibilities, but also like the idea that these people have this possibility of making another Mars colony and doing something else and what they could do with it. And I think it goes into, the possibility of the future and what you can do. And I think he thinks of that, but then immediately retreats. And I think the reason he immediately retreats is because he sees something horrible happen. I think that's like what scares people from a lot of people from doing a small business or doing a side hustle or doing like, even when I tell people I do stuff like this, they're always like shocked. They're like, I can never do that because of, embarrassment or worse things, financial ruin or something. And that was obviously very scary and horrible, but she still was helped make this amazing discovery, which is still, her life didn't go in vain. I say that like she's a real person, but she isn't. But it spoke to me. But I think when Jeff retreats in the creative director thing after they basically kill that architect lead, and he takes that how most people take a corporate job is like you have to retreat into that. You see, your family or yourself going into some sort of ruin, and you take it, and he takes that creative director job, but then he sees like what has happened, like he can't see his friends, he can't see his family, and even that part I think I relate to a lot because it's like trying to manage all these different things while having a full-time job sometimes completely falls apart, much like with the grasshopper thing, which I thought was a really great point because there's so many times between this and my job and family stuff I feel like it's all gonna fall apart and there'll be grasshoppers everywhere theoretically, and that I felt was so relatable. That was really crazy. But I think the final episode was really telling because in that episode you don't even see him and you see all the people talking about him, what he's done, and then at the end when they play Right Now, if you were alive in the early 90s, man, that's a thing was so everywhere. And that's interesting, they say 25 years and I'm not sure when this is actually supposed to take place because like the technology feels kind of retro and older, but that whole thing is very interesting. He plays it and then he runs off and goes into the possibility of life that's out there on Mars, sort of saying like you can eventually go off and take that plunge. I think it is kind of a romanticization because I feel like most people just don't have that possibility. Like I think that is something that all these motivational things and motivation YouTube things don't want to tell you is like people can't do that because they don't have the finances to do that and they don't have the experience to do that and they don't have the support system or something like that. And I think so many times when I see a show and someone just quit their job, I always find it to be pretty unrealistic because most people can't. I think a lot of you watching it can't. I can't. It's just like a thing you just don't have in your life. As much as people who make more money will just say, well, just quit. Like that's not a thing. And I think he does, but I think for his character it makes sense. But it's also like, if I was in a situation, I would try to do the same thing because it's Mars, and we should have more possibilities on Mars, and he did it. Or theoretically, if there's a season 2, I guess we'll find out. But I think it gets into everything like that. I think it is highly metaphorical. I would love to see the short film. If it ever comes available, I will actually review it. It may remind me sort of regular show, but I think it is because I very much relate to it, unless I'm wearing the shirt, and the J.G. Quintel stuff. But if J.G. Quintel's soul had been completely crushed by having a full-time job, I don't think that guy's job is like being an animator. I love him for it. He's Close Enough was great. All his shows are great. But this is somebody whose dreams have been hampered and thrown water on, and he still does it, but he's majorly been knocked down. And I completely know that feeling from corporate America. And I think Fired on Mars might be one of my favorite corporate stories about millennials, really. I know Severance is a show. I haven't watched it. I'm sorry. So maybe that's really good at that too. But I think this just like from everything, maybe it's sort of like simple, like a Hellmouth being under your high school or something. But I thought it worked very well. I like the character of Jeff. I'm fine with characters who are sort of unmotivated and seemingly unmotivated and sad sacks and stuff like that. Maybe because I am one. But I appreciate what it was saying about how our possibility is reined in by our own bizarre social constraints that we continue to perpetuate and continue to do regardless of the possibilities that lay in front of us. And the fact that they are on Mars, they can do anything they want, and they're in a fucking corporate office. And that's what they chose to do. And of what purpose, who the fuck knows? But they're there and they're doing it. And I think there's probably no greater metaphor from working a corporate job I've seen in a long time. And I think Fired from Mars is probably one of those great sci-fi things that understands the great metaphorical qualities of using science fiction, but also understands the potential we all have to hamper down by having to take on one of those things. So if you've seen Fired on Mars and you'd like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.